No denying that so many headlines nowadays have to do with energy. Of course, we can talk about the price of oil, the price of gas. Those are always a headline. Last week was a great example of energy headlines. Carney government announcing that it would double the country's electrical grid by 2050. They've got a new government strategy that will adjust clean electricity regulations to provide more flexibility that will allow natural gas to play a larger role in building the grid. That announcement came one day before Carney signed a memorandum of understanding new developments with the Alberta government on developing a new oil pipeline. And then, of course, all the stories on the demands of the electrical grid thanks to AI, thanks to electric vehicles, thanks to other burgeoning industries. So let's talk about energy with someone who knows a thing or two about it. Dan McTeague's on the line, the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Dan, thanks for coming on the show.
Good to be here. Yeah, what a menu of things to discuss.
So much to get to, and we didn't even get to half of it, to be quite honest. But I want to start off with the government's announcement. We're going to double the electrical grid. But part of me, Dan, thinks, well, hold on a second. If the government did nothing, the electrical grid was going to double regardless, because it has to. So how do you see all of this?
Very much the same way. And of course, we have to understand electrical grid isn't just about, electrical outlets in our home. It's the power, the production, the transmission, and who's going to pay for it at a time when, by 2050, Canada could very well see, another third, maybe 40% increase in its population. So we're going to have to build that anyways. And I think a lot of production and a lot of hydro corporations are in fact moving towards that to begin with. But it isn't just about commitments and making wonderful, for the moment commentary. It requires the skills, the knowledge, technology. It also requires the materials to make these things happen. And whether we realize it or not, if Canada is going to grow at 2 to 3% a year, by 2050, my math shows that you would have to have a near doubling anyways of what you plan to produce out there. It's how you do it and what is deemed to be clean energy. Some will say, well, that's non-fossil fuel, not coal, not oil, anything else, not even natural gas, although I think we're now starting to admit that natural gas plays an extraordinarily important role in all of this. And more importantly, the so-called clean renewables aren't necessarily clean, especially when it comes to things like, solar panels and blades for windmills that after 20, 30 years have to be landfilled and can create a bit of a toxic anti-environmental outcome. That aside, I think all governments are realizing that we have to play catch-up because we spent 10 years navel-gazing, saying there's only certain types of energy we want to back. It's pretty clear by the global standards and the energy crisis that we find ourselves in. It's an energy shock, despite futures markets and commodities traders playing games on Wall Street to short oil and whatnot. The reality is that the world's going to use a lot more. And even if we don't use it here in North America, the rest of the world is going to play catch up.
So let me ask you how you view the announcement from last week from Mark Carney and the Liberal government. Do you view it as overall as a positive?
Well, I think it's acknowledging what we have to do. I'm not sure if it's a re-announcement of what's already taking place. I think you correctly pointed out at the beginning, we're doing this. I'm in Ontario, and Ontario Power Generation has foretold and has sort of played the view that it's going to have to double its capacity, its output, whether that be more nuclear plants, more use of natural gas, or SMRs, small nuclear reactors. All of these things are, developing, and all of us recognize that what we've created today is a fraction of what we're going to need down the road. And I think everyone is as it were, sitting in the boat, oars in the water, rowing in the same direction. The federal government, I think, is simply acknowledging what is not so much transformational, but what is in fact necessary and practical to maintain momentum.
Let me just ask you about on the natural gas front, the changes made there. Is that promising that they're seeing some daylight on that subject?
Well, LNG is now the promise of the future. We see that, and Canada missed an opportunity by saying there was no business case, when in fact the rest of the world is doing just that. I see Russia, the United States, especially with what happened to Qatar and having a 2 to 3 year lapse in its ability to get LNG. But liquefied natural gas is in fact the future. Everyone has a lot of it, and it's a lot cleaner than anything we currently have, has less emissions. It's not perfect, But like those who grumbled about nuclear energy 20, 30, 40 years ago and still do today, we're going to put a bit of water with our wine to achieve a cleaner future that is practical and realistic and dispatchable.
Let me ask you if this pipeline, the Alberta pipeline, is it actually going to happen now? What's your take?
No, it's not going to happen. I dare I say I'm not sure exactly why one thinks carbon has to be sequestered. I understand the point behind it, but I don't think that's. I think that's a killer for this project, because it demands $15 to $20 billion from the public or from someone to build a pipeline. So as you build a pipeline, assume you get approvals, and assume you can get through all of the checklists that are going to be required there, and those who will oppose it, you still have to build a facility that will sequester, that will capture the carbon. And there's no real, legitimacy to the idea that this is somehow going to be net neutral, or in other words, what you're producing will be taken out by what this facility can do. It's a great idea. It does work. Boundary Dam being a good example in Saskatchewan. But it's going to make the cost of a Canadian barrel of oil so much more expensive. Can
I just ask you, because Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, seems to be getting along, pretty well with Mark Carney. Are you suggesting, well, there will be a day coming, whether it's a week from now or a year from now, where all of that blows up?
I think a lot of that is sort of just to buy a bit more time. I think Danielle Smith is trying to be a pragmatist. I think Carney has certainly changed his view from his time, and he wrote the book on values and led the charge globally to try to definance, oil investment around the world. That almost blew up in his hands. He could have been hit with antitrust moves in the United States. I think both are realizing pragmatically that the world needs a lot more energy, and that isn't just going to be clean energy and windmills and solar panels and whatnot. It's going to require that we put all of our best efforts forward at ensuring that the extent that we get what the world needs desperately. And by the way, Elias, this is the context is very different 3 months than that was 3 months ago or 6 months ago when the MOU was proposed. We have an energy crisis, and it has to be addressed. Otherwise, we're going to have significant, serious shortages globally, and that's going to change the political dynamics, not just around the world, but here in Canada.
Dan, got to leave it there. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be here. Thanks, Elias.
Dan McTeague, President of Canadians for Affordable Energy.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. Since retiring from the NFL, I've had a lot on my mind, and now I've got my own show. So if you're tired of lazy takes, if you want honest conversations, join us each week. Film Never Lies, available on all TSN platforms and the iHeartRadio app.